Sometimes, life brings us to destiny moments where lost souls cross paths, and this is the story of Tom, a forgotten homeless guy, which no one could have predicted. By civilization and Daisy, a little stray cat who is quietly struggling to live on the chilly city streets. Daisy's soft meow drew Tom in on a chilly winter night, when it looked like there was no hope left. After losing everything, a man found a cause to continue living despite the gloom in his life. A stray cat who had been left and injured sought comfort in the arms of a man with there is nothing left to lose. But this is more than a tale of a homeless man and a cat. Tom was surprised to learn that Daisy, his saving companion, was the property of a remarkable person. Tom's journey begins with a famous jewelry designer in London leading an opulent life, and Daisy turns into a tale of generosity, selflessness, and the transformational power of Enter the Tale of Tom and Daisy, who not only shape one life but also touch innumerable souls along the road. Come learn about the transformational potential of a single little cat and the power of love and compassion. The story starts now with Tom, a middle-aged man living on the outskirts of a small town as a homeless wanderer. After a string of catastrophes, a talented carpenter in a stable town in northern England lost in sickness that prevented him from working, and his wife's return to bankruptcy had forced him to the periphery of society. Now possessing just a ripped cloth bag and a shabby coat, the town in particular cozy windows, pleasant yellow lights in the chilly, barren winter months stood in sharp contrast to the street corner where Tom found refuge was dark and bitterly cold, bringing back memories of his past. One stormy night, his nights were filled with loneliness and a sense of loss as life kept popping up. Tom's only chance as he crouched against an ancient brick wall under a thin blanket was to surviving till morning while evading the frost's lethal grip in a semi-conscious state. He initially disregarded the faint meow, thinking it was the sound of a stray cat. But it continued. Tom followed the sound, almost beseechingly, raising his blanket, and found himself in a small, dim lane. Shivering and weak, a little black and white cat is entangled in a pile of trash netting. Tom was unable to ignore the blood leaking into its filthy fur from its damaged legs despite his own deprivation. He took off his old scarf, held the defenseless animal tenderly, and attempted to warm it. Tom returned the feline to his corner, set it on his cloth bag, and covered it with his scarf to use the little remnants he had left, including a slice of stale bread and a little amount of he gave the cat some of the leftover milk he had pleaded for earlier. And the small animal, however feeble, looked at Tom, spoke to the cat, as though he understood his kindness for hours, his eyes big and gleaming. He told a friend about his life, including the good times he had with his wife and in his wood shop, who loved animals and would chastise me for allowing you to freeze like this, he remarked, grinning nostalgically. Chose to call the cat Daisy in honor of his wife's love for flowers, and Daisy appeared to comprehend. Putting her head in his palm and purring quietly as a sign of appreciation during the days that following, Daisy gave Tom the motivation to continue searching the community for food sharing every morning. Daisy started to attract attention from onlookers in the town at an early age by carrying even the smallest crumbs. Tom and Daisy would frequently receive sausages from the boy, and an old woman who sold bread would always smile when Tom recognized Daisy as more than simply a cat when he observed him tenderly petting the animal. She was a beacon of hope. One morning, despite his terrible reality, he felt the warmth of humanity via her. Tom found a little collar concealed beneath Daisy's matted coat while brushing her fur. It was finely crafted, with a small clasp containing a folded piece of paper that Tom unfolded with care, and discovered scribbled words. Please return to 17 Greenfield Street, London, if you find this cat. Tom was both excited and nervous as he held the note that a substantial reward would be given. Daisy was obviously not your typical stray, but what if he gave her back? He would lose the most valuable thing, companion in his life. Tom had to make the tough decision to either keep Daisy for himself or travel to visions of the little town and its friendly people rushed through his head as he searched for her owner. Recalling his wife, who had always taught him to act morally, and examining Daisy's, Tom felt conflicted about trusting eyes. But in the end, he decided to do what he thought was right. Even if it meant leaving the small town with his stuff in hand, he prepared to embark on an uncertain future. Tom got up the following morning, prepared to set out on a voyage that no one, not even himself, could foresee. Daisy, he had spent the night in the tiny alley where the dim sunshine was shining, was cuddled up next to him, staring with wide eyes as though she knew the lengthy journey. Tom grabbed the address letter from Daisy's collar and gathered his limited. He wrapped his possessions in a shabby cloth bag, some old bread, and a tiny water bottle. Daisy, dressed in his old coat, and they left the town he had known for years behind. Tom spent hours walking across serene country roads, taking care to keep Daisy safe. He was hailed by curious farmers who were amazed by the small cat in his arms. Some of them even offered him food, making the trip a little bit easier. Whenever someone asked Tom why he was going so far, he would just grin and say because it's the proper thing to do. Tom walked almost 20 kilometers before reaching there were stone cottages in a peaceful setting in this little, charming village. Met Margaret, an old tea store owner who loved animals, and saw Daisy right away. Margaret said, "Where are you from?" as she noticed Tom dozing off by the side of the road while holding a hot cup of. Tom told his story while Daisy sat on his knee and sniffed curiously at the tea in front of him. Margaret paid close attention to her eyes as she heard about his past life and his decision to go on this adventure, glistening as she learned of Tom and Daisy's friendship. The world needs more individuals like before. Preparing some additional food for Tom to carry with him on his journey through this village. She added, "You heard rumors about Daisy's collar," and a local man acknowledged its distinctive style, saying it was probably created by a posh jeweler in London. During this period of intense interest in Daisy became Tom's biggest source of support as they proceeded on their journey. Looking into Daisy's dependable eyes at times of hunger and fatigue gave him the courage to continue. Daisy, who appeared to comprehend, remained silently snuggled under Tom's coat. When they paused to rest on chilly days, Tom's thoughts frequently strayed to recollections of Daisy, brought back memories of his wife's love of cats. In the afternoons when she would this trip wasn't only about getting Daisy back to her owner. It also involved knitting with a cat cuddled up on her lap. It was also a road of recovery for Tom. It was difficult, but it was also full with touching moments when Tom, a newsboy in a tiny village, met Jack, a happy newspaper salesman despite hailing from a low-income background. Jack shared a loaf of bread with Tom and Daisy for lunch. The boy's normally difficult days were made brighter by his uncommon delight in playing with the small cat. After learning that Tom was walking hundreds of kilometers, a truck driver named Graham offered to drive him and Daisy to London. Graham, a former dog owner, told tales about his beloved. Despite these encouraging words, Pet finds echoes of his own relationship in Tom and Daisy's friendship. Encounters. The trip was not without its challenges. One day, Daisy nearly lost her way when a bunch of stray dogs. Tom rushed after her, his heart racing as he realized how important it was to keep his little companion. Tom and Daisy had to seek refuge in an abandoned barn one night due to a strong downpour. Tom pulled Daisy close to keep her warm in the weak light of his flashlight. "But we won't stop him," murmured. "I swear to return you to your rightful place in a bigger town." Tom encountered in Daisy's collar was identified by an antique trader, who clarified that it was custom-made by a prominent jewelry retailer in the heart of London, proving that Daisy most certainly belonged to someone. Whether Tom was rich or famous, this revelation left him feeling conflicted about whether he should take Daisy back. Stood at the pinnacle of a location where she didn't really belong, or was he assisting her in finding happiness again? Tom sighed as he stroked Daisy and looked out at the distant shimmering lights of London. wondering what the vast city would hold. But he was aware that this trip wasn't only about returning Daisy, it was all about discovering a new purpose for his life. And for Tom, the voyage meant it had been more than just a physical journey thus far. It had been a profound rediscovering of hope and generosity. Man-animal link after enduring days of hardship on their journey. Tom and Daisy eventually reached. Tom was stunned by the vast, busy city of London, with its tall skyscrapers, neon lights, and to the tranquil countryside and small villages. He were worlds away from the constant stream of people. Passed via Daisy, who was similarly perplexed by the cacophonous turmoil Tom was resting in while wearing Tom's old coat. Looking at the crumpled message and softly petting Daisy on a park seat close to the train station. "All right, Daisy, we're almost there," he said uneasily, referring to the address 17, Greenfield Street. He kept thinking about who owned this cat, and whether they would take good care of her on Greenfield Street. It was in one of the most affluent areas of London, with opulent homes with sparkling windows, and Tom strolled through this opulent scene, where pricey automobiles were parked along immaculate streets. Felt out of place, little, and unimportant. This world was very different from the straightforward sparse. Tom stopped, his heart racing, as he stood in front of 17, Greenfield Street, the place he and Daisy shared. The home was a magnificent mansion with iron gates and a well-kept garden that exuded luxury. Daisy gave him a look that seemed to encourage him to proceed. "Okay, Daisy, it's time to act appropriately," he muttered, mustering the bravery to ring the doorbell. And the big door opened to reveal a middle-aged man in a dapper suit. Gave Tom a startled glance at first. Then his eyes swiftly moved to Daisy, and his face brightened with happiness. "Daisy, oh my Daisy," he said, moving closer to remove the. Tom paused before telling his story of how he had discovered the cat in his arms. Edward listened carefully as the man took care of Daisy in an alleyway during their journey. Clearly touched by Tom's tale, he gave Tom a heartfelt thank you and invited him into the opulent furnished living room. Edward, a well-known jewelry designer, gave his version of events. Daisy, the owner of a posh chain of stores, had been his pet for 3 years after being adopted from an animal. "I lost her on a trip to the country, but I found a rescue facility," Edward remarked, his voice heavy with, "I felt I had lost her forever since I looked everywhere and couldn't find her." Edward wasn't simply an animal lover who had lost his wife a number of years prior. He had experienced suffering akin to Tom's. As Edward talked, Tom felt a strong bond with Daisy, who had shown him comfort during that difficult period. He understood that it had been the proper choice to bring Daisy back, even though he knew that Daisy had become Tom's greatest love, and he was heartbroken at the idea of losing her. In his otherwise bleak life, comfort is a source of hope, but witnessing Edward embrace Daisy with such compassion, Tom recognized that this was her place. And Edward saw the connection between Daisy, and Tom remarked, "You're a good man, Tom. I've regained a piece of my heart because of you." He gave Tom a sizable prize as a token of appreciation, but Tom graciously refused, saying, "I didn't do this for money. I only wanted Daisy, my best friend, to be happy." Edward was impressed by Tom's candor and selflessly came up with the concept. "Tom, I want to assist you start over, not simply say thank you. I would be proud to take care of this house and its garden if you would be willing. Daisy will still be your friend if you stay here, of course." Tom was astounded by the offer. He had no idea that this trip, which started as a quest to get Daisy back, would lead to. Daisy nuzzled Tom's hand as if she understood the moment, responding to such an opportunity. For the first time, Tom accepted Edward's proposition, with a shaky voice urging him to stay. For years, he had optimism for the future because Daisy, the little cat who had been missing, had not only helped Tom find his way home, but she also assisted him in rediscovering his own path that night. The garden, with its small but comfortable caretaker's quarters at the rear of Edward's mansion as promised, his unshakable sanctuary, was made up of colorful flowers and old trees. Companion splitting her time between Tom's consoling arms and Edward's warm lap. Tom's journey had began with uncertainty and sorrow, but it concluded with friendships recovering and a second opportunity at Daisy had shown two damaged souls that love and kindness might blossom by bringing them together in life. Tom had started a whole new chapter in his life, even at the most unlikely places. From a homeless vagrant, Edward's grand mansion became the custodian of the expansive garden, and in Edward Daisy's unofficial friend. The two men's close yet significant relationship persisted. The expansive garden with its shaded trees will act as a link between their formerly fragmented lifestyles. And colorful flower beds become Tom's haven, where he spent his days watering plants and trimming branches. Daisy frequently ran around the lush space like a miniature assistant, taking care of every inch of it. In their spare time, Tom and Edward would engage in amusing antics that made him smile, relax in the lawn, and exchange life experiences and ideas. Over time, Edward revealed more about. He acknowledged that in the past, he had been a driven individual who devoted all of his time to creating his family at the expense of his profession. But he discovered too late how much he had. Tom listened as he confessed that he missed Daisy, who had been his lone source of comfort and helped him achieve equilibrium. Both men had suffered significant losses, and they were acutely sympathetic to Edward's regrets. In Tom, Edward and Daisy's connection developed as they started to mend through their talks. As the days went by, Edward, who was used to living alone, started to feel the warmth of a Tom, who had long considered himself a failure in his small, unusual family, began to rediscover his feeling of direction and value after recognizing that he had grown to be an essential component of Edward and Daisy's. Daisy stayed at the center of everything, seemingly able to detect their feelings and provide solace. Daisy would, in her own way, crawl onto Tom's lap and nuzzle his hand whenever he felt depressed, as though on Edward's more trying days, Daisy would sit next to him in silence and bring a one day. Edward invited a few close friends to a small dinner party and brought a soothing presence to the space. Despite his initial reluctance, Tom agreed to assist with the preparations despite his hectic schedule. Startled to see Margaret, the gracious tea store proprietor who had previously assisted him, among the patrons, and Daisy on the way to London, Margaret was equally taken aback to see Tom in this situation. After exchanging cordial welcomes, Tom excitedly described how Daisy had introduced him to this new. Edward asked Margaret to the dinner after learning about her generosity. The gathering was immediately lively and pleasurable due to Margaret's humor and candor. Margaret also revealed that she hadn't adopted a new cat since Edward touched her, and that she had lost her cherished one years prior. Recommended giving her a kitten from the neighborhood animal shelter based on her narrative, to which Margaret gladly acknowledged that things weren't always easy. One day, as Tom was cleaning the garden, Tom received a brief but straightforward letter from his estranged younger brother asking him to come back. Tom felt conflicted about the proposal to settle a minor property issue in their hometown. He had discovered contentment and meaning in his new life, but the idea of going back to his hometown was heartbreaking. Of both treasured recollections and heartbreaking losses seemed intimidating, and Edward's observation of Tom's uneasiness inspired. Edward urged him to face his history, saying that you can never be fully free if you don't face what's behind you. Tom decided to take a little journey back to his hometown after being reassured by Edward, had grown to consider Tom a close friend, and vowed to wait for him to return. This trip wasn't simply about settling legal issues. Gave Tom the opportunity to face the upsetting memories that had plagued him. For years, Tom's thoughts drifted back to his happy afternoons on the train ride home. When everything fell in the dark, he and his wife could hear the sound of wood being carved in his workshop. Tom greeted his younger brother upon arriving, who had undergone tremendous transformation over the years. The first exchange was tense, but Tom's newly discovered composure and maturity made things easier. The brothers eventually got back in touch, cleared out their differences, and settled the property disagreement amicably, but more significantly, the journey enabled Tom to release the weight he had been carrying for so long. He soon came to the realization that he was no longer the lost, shattered guy Daisy and Edward had assisted. When Tom returned to London, Edward helped him rediscover his value in the beauty of life's second chance. And Daisy gave him a warm welcome as they stood together in the garden he now called home. While Edward's friendship remained constant and steadfast, Tom had a deep sense of healing and rejuvenation. The physical and emotional journey had fully circled around to what had started as an attempt to find a lost cat had evolved into a path of reconciliation, camaraderie, and self-discovery. Not only for Tom, but when Tom arrived to London, Edward greeted him with a loving grin for everyone Daisy had touched. Daisy instantly jumped into Tom's lap and nuzzled her head while drinking a cup of hot tea in the well-known garden. Sitting on the wooden seat and breathing in, she pressed against his hand as though to express how much she had missed him. Tom experienced a genuine sensation of the fresh air in the garden he had meticulously managed for the first time in years. Edward, who typically secured a seat next to Tom, stated, "You know, Tom, since you came here, Daisy gave me life again, so my house doesn't feel empty anymore. But you helped me realize I don't have to live alone." Tom, who was taken aback by Edward's candor, just grinned because he had never believed that his presence may result in such a shift. Therefore, Edward made the decision to show his appreciation. As a famous jewelry designer, he made a new collar as a unique present for Tom and Daisy. For Daisy, this was more than simply a piece of jewelry. It represented the three of them's friendship. The collar had a little phrase that said, "Home is where love resides," and an engraving of a daisy flower. Edward, who is not usually sentimental, showed Tom the collar before putting it around Daisy's neck. Felt his eyes sting. Edward murmured softly, "You didn't have to do this." Edward grinned. "We all need to seeing Daisy wearing her new collar served as a reminder of where we belong." Edward had an even more ambitious notion. He chose to create a non-profit organization that would aid stray animals, and for homeless people who turn to animals for solace and hope. The charity would not only rescuing animals while also helping individuals like Tom, who have found a new purpose in life as a result of their. Edward asked Tom, "What a link with a four-legged friend," to assist in running the foundation. Animal shelters and homeless outreach initiatives. Tom was initially apprehensive about his capacity to assume such a significant role. But with Edward's support, and as he concurred that Daisy's hope, the nonprofit, immediately attracted media attention. It drew in donors. The tale of Tom, Edward, and Daisy motivated numerous individuals. Inspiring Tom's life was transformed by a message of kindness and the transformational power of human-animal connections. He not only found a new family with Edward and Daisy, but he also found a renewed feeling of direction each day as he collaborated with Edward to broaden the foundation's scope while Daisy, the amiable ambassador, once charmed everyone she encountered while out for a walk in the park. Looking up at Tom, the young kid ran up to pet Daisy and asked, "Are you the one who saved Daisy?" Tom laughed. "I'm not sure who saved me, although Daisy might have done so during the quiet evenings when the three of them were together." Would sit by the fireside with Tom on the adjoining couch, Edward in his armchair, and Daisy cuddled up in his lap. Couch while viewing the flickering flames, Tom thought back on Ed's voyage and came to the realization that not only had, in addition to finding her home, Daisy had given him and Edward a fresh lease on life and a family. One night, Edward Tom stated, "I felt like I had nothing left to offer, but now I see that." Occasionally Edward nodded while looking into the fire, saying that all it takes to alter a life is kindness and a little love. And occasionally he responded, "A little cat can perform the most amazing miracles," which puts a stop to the motivational tale of Tom and Daisy, two forlorn souls who came across one another and started a healing journey. Though life is frequently filled with obstacles, we can transform it with kindness and compassion. Their story serves as a reminder not only of our planet, but also of the lives of those in our immediate vicinity. Sincere relationships and faith and kindness can brighten Daisy's path, even at the darkest times. didn't simply drag Tom out of the shadows. Instead, she unlocked the door to a fresh start, where they both discovered family and a real meaning of home. And I appreciate you following along. If you think that tales like this has the potential to spread positivity, so please like the video and tell your friends about it, your family, and follow the channel for more insightful information. Every little gesture of let compassion and sharing inspire us all. Kindness can make a difference. See you in the next story.